I'm sorry, everyone. I'm trying to get it to let me stream in landscape, and it's not a fan. Oh no, this is totally obnoxious. Okay. Well, it looks like it's not going to let me. So I'm going to instead rig this tripod, a rubber band, and my phone this way, which I know makes for the best sign-offs. I am very aware. Just give me one moment. Classic. All right, I think that'll work just fine. I know. In fact, this Chris is all about my tech disasters. All right, this will be just fine. We'll call it. Cool. Hi, friends. Hello. Welcome to May. Actually, like a third of the way through May, which is kind of amazing. And thank you for rolling with the portrait mode. That was, well, you know, an adventure. Always an adventure here. Hey guys, just watching everyone join in. Thanks for saying hi. I know there aren't too many of us here, and people will come and go, and that's totally fine. My goal for today, as far as live stream is concerned, was of course to touch on. There were just a couple questions that were given on Twitter or on Facebook or on here, which I'm happy to answer. Also, it is, at least for the US, it is Mother's Day, and so I was thinking about checking in on some interesting kind of facts and tidbits about motherhood, female parental care in some other species. And then I was thinking that we could spend a little bit of time as a nature league, kind of doing some league building, if you will, because I know that there's a lot of names and handles in the chat that are here all the time, and I would love for maybe you guys to know who each other are, and same for me. So after we kind of check in on news and do a little bit of motherhood fun, I'm thinking we'll kind of go one at a time. I'll moderate through the chat and just kind of see who all's here and what we do and the things we enjoy, and maybe share our favorite species that are local to where we live, and kind of talk about how all our different jobs and roles can be a part of conservation and a part of what a nature league is for 2020 and beyond, just kind of who we are. So that's kind of my plan for today. Oh, nice. Good to hear, David. David says portrait mode works surprisingly well. I will take surprisingly well. That's my favorite kind of well. So the thing I'm gonna do first, kind of like I do with my lecture classes, is give myself an idea of the headlines, of science headlines. And so what I do is I go to sciencedaily.com, and then I go environment, plants, and animals. And I'm going to post that link into the chat for you guys. And this, I haven't looked yet today. I was definitely waking up slowly. And so what I do, this is Plants and Animals News for May 10th, 2020. Science Daily is just a website that gathers different headlines and papers that are being published in the peer-reviewed literature, and then either has the press release, like maybe from that university or from that group, or it has someone who, as a science communicator, wrote up about the piece. Where is Sweet Baby Jane? I yelled upstairs and told her last call, but my other animal companion is up there with her, and she might be just in a post-food cuddle pile upstairs, though I'm starting to get very jealous, to be sure. I might send a text. Oh wait, no, I can't. That's my phone. Never mind. Maybe on here. We'll see what happens. I'll be like, bring down the cat. She's just the best. So, ScienceDaily.com news, plants and animals. Let's check it out. Let's see what the top headlines are. So it looks like, interestingly, even within the plants and animals headlines, we're still getting stuff about SARS-CoV-2, so COVID-19, mainly in that it is relating to virus evolution. And viruses are those kind of strange middle ground when we think about, life on Earth. And so it looks like there are research teams looking at the genomes of the actual virus in thousands of people, to see diversity in that virus genome. And that's the kind of thing that we do with conservation genetics and genomics, is we can look at the full genome or the full set of DNA from an entire, like from thousands of individuals of a species, and start to understand things about that population. And so scientists are doing that exact same thing with this virus genome. And then what do we see? Regenerate neurons in mice with spinal cord injury and optic nerve damage. Yep. So that's a big one. Remember with model organisms and research, we can do things and show efficacy, or at least show correlation in non-human model species, mice being a huge one for humans. But remember, a mouse is very different than a person. And also remember that there's a lot of different, ethical trade-offs that come with something like using non-human animal models. And that's, its own whole thing. But it doesn't mean that the discoveries aren't incredible. We can certainly see that. How birds evolve big brains. Love that. Actually, is Chris on this? Sorry, I have a friend who I went to school with. We did our master's degrees together at University of North Carolina in Wilmington. But he had a paleontology background and then wound up going on to do his PhD in paleontology, mixed with also genetics and phylogenetics relatedness. Brain evolution traced from Tyrannosaurus to modern crows. Ooh, love that. Love that. And I've got to wonder which team this was. We got Bruce Museum. So they did CT scans looking at brain size and skull cavities, because remember, bird brains, like current birds, are just incredibly intelligent, and have really interesting neuron densities and all that kind of stuff. So crows, I like how they're saying here, crows are really off the charts. They outpaced all other birds. Our results suggest that calling someone bird-brained is actually quite a compliment. So it looks like crows evolved massive brains, but the way that they did it was that their body size and brain size kind of both rapidly evolved. So this is more about modern birds than looking at, non-avian like dinosaurs. But it looks like they just went over time to check it out. I also see in this. Oh my God, Chris is on that. Nice find, David. Yeah. Okay, well, that's really funny. I guess I'll message Chris. Be like, you're welcome for the free PR. He is a very, very good friend. But we are total pains in the ass to each other. We keep each other on our toes for sure. That's great though. Their team does awesome work. So I just saw though on the strange and offbeat, plants and animals. Inspired by cheetahs, researchers build fastest soft robots yet. I don't even know what a soft robot is, so I have to click on this, obviously. Let's see. Oh, North Carolina State University, where Chris went to undergrad. There we go. Inspired by the biomechanics of cheetahs, researchers have developed a new type of soft robot capable of moving more quickly on solid surfaces or in water than previous generations of soft robots. Question, what on earth is a soft robot? To stable states. Oh, that's very fascinating. Oh, interesting. This is very cool. I'm going to put the link here so that you guys can follow up and check it out later if you're into engineering or into biomechanics or any of that fun stuff. So yeah, very cool. Very, very cool. I dig it. And then there's all kinds of things. So yeah, while parts of the world definitely feel like they are kind of at a halt, there's all kinds of research and amazing work being done and still happening and still coming out. So you can always kind of sift through um, the viral headlines and find some really amazing stuff if you are feeling overwhelmed by other news stories. It's totally an understandable thing. Uh, and so there you go. There's a fun one to check out. So next on the agenda in Latin being like something that must be done. The NDA at the end is a type of is an ending that tells us how to use that word, and it's like a must be done. So I always hear the word agenda. The next thing on our must be done, yep, is to chat a little Mother's Day. Um, First off, to my mother, I love you so much. You are so awesome. Um, if you see this later, see this now, or whatever, I want you to know that I love you, and I'll call you later. And for any moms in the stream, happy Mother's Day. I hope that you're able to get some love and feel all that appreciation coming your way, even if it is physically distanced, certainly. Nice. David is following up with our with soft robotics. Okay, so it looks like materials that are more similar to living organisms. So I think away from metals. I guess the assumption with robots is that they are hulking metal beings. So when you move into different plant materials, then soft robots. It's just such a strange phrase. You know what? That's my new band name. Brit G and the Soft Robots. That's so good. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's happening. That's happening now. That's one to save for sure. Um, cool. So speaking of soft robots, Mother's Day. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, David, for posting that follow up. So here's the cool thing about Mother's Day. Sister lives in England. Yep, fair enough. Eric, I will never stop giving you ideas for fan art. Oh, hello from Austria, indeed. Yes, happy Mother's Day to all those around. So I think it's really interesting. I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to say on this topic, and what came to mind is that whenever you search for like Mother's Day, animals, and amazing facts about animals, and Mother's Day, it all winds up being pretty mammal centric, which is a thing, right? We are mammals and we like to read and learn about other mammals. It feels closer to home because it is, as far as our evolutionary lines are concerned. But so much of when we look at a species and say, oh my gosh, this species, they have such good mothers, or they have such incredible parenting. I think it's really important to keep in mind that something like parenting and something like motherhood and those behaviors are still adaptations to the environment. Parental care, how many offspring an individual has, how many mate pairings, how long they take care of those offspring. Like these are all things determined by the environment and by different selective pressures. So I think that it's better, instead of thinking about, oh, what a good mom, that species has such good moms because they, take care of them for a long time the way that we do. We should zoom out a little bit and check out some other branches maybe of the phylogenetic tree, or that tree of life. Phylogenetics being relatedness, how different species are related to one another through evolutionary time. And so one of the concepts, this is kind of like just an ecology 101 concept about offspring and how many they have in parental care, is something called these life curves. And there are kind of two main strategies, which is something called R selected, so like the letter R, and then K selected, like the letter K. There are all kinds of variants, but in general, R selected species, you can almost think like R for reproduce. They have a ton of offspring. And that's kind of a strategy where you hope some of them live, right? There's a ton of them, you can go out and then there they all are. And there's probably a lot of mortality, but you have a ton of offspring. And then something like K-selected, these are species that are more pressured by the entire kind of capacity of the environment for their species. So maybe there aren't that many resources or space. These are species that have very few offspring. So, like, you could argue that humans on the whole are K-selected. We have very few offspring. We invest a ton of parental care, like 18 years worth, right? Like a ton. And, to very few. And so when you think of mothers or fathers or just parents, humans certainly do it for quite some time. But that's because, we are K-selected. I think it's really cool to look at motherhood or mothers and parents in species that are selected, species that we typically think of as really not doing the parenting thing, because I think there's so many fascinating examples of what parenting and sacrifice and motherhood means. And so I grabbed a couple for you guys, keeping in mind, right, that parental care is something that happens because of the environment. So either because like there's a really harsh environment, like the eggs or young, they aren't going to do well unless there's like definitely help given by the parents, right? Also in environments where there's not that much food, or like food is scarce and maybe there's a lot of competition for it, doing the parenting thing, or even like guarding from predators. These are all things that make a species more likely to invest a lot of that care, right? But I would like to offer you the example of sea snails. Sea snails are a great example of where you're thinking about like parental care, classic example of, the penguins going one at a time, going food and bringing it back for the chick, right? There are a lot of different ways that parents will feed offspring in those early times. And one way is something called a trophic egg. Trophic is related to the word trophos, it's a word way back when, Greek, meaning like food. Pretty sure Greek. Please, someone tell me if I'm mistaken. Meaning food. So trophic eggs are like saying food eggs. So basically, in these species that have trophic eggs, the offspring, that juvenile, is born or hatches or comes out of that egg and then is actually able to eat it. It's like a ready to go meal, which is great. And so, so species with trophic eggs, like sea snails, are actually putting that parental investment in before the offspring are even born, like before they're even out and about doing their thing. There's already been that investment, which is pretty cool. So that's sea snails, and that's a fun example. Also, yeah, speaking of cannibalism, that reduces cannibalism with siblings because there winds up being food, which is great. Always good. Spiders, I would like to offer again. Spider is one of those species that we're just kind of like, oh, well, they are selected. They just have like a ton of eggs and whatever. Parents don't really care. It's not really a thing that we think of. Let's see, we got Infectostylus Chris. Yes, of or relating to nutrition. Indeed. Yeah, right? A packed lunch, right? It's like, here's your PBJ, love you. I know you just like hatched out of your PBJ, which might be gross, but don't worry about it because there's not like a cultural imposition of that being gross. So just eat it and it's going to be great. There's a t-shirt. Wonderful. I'm very succinct. Yeah. So, spiders, specifically velvet spiders, cool example. Velvet spiders, the mothers actually take this a definite step further, and they themselves, the moms, are the meal for the offspring. So velvet spiders are one example. There's other species that do this too, where the mother actually has all the offspring eat her as that meal. And those offspring won't like leave that nester area until they have like totally consumed mom. So if we want to wish a happy Mother's Day to any species, let me just say, velvet spiders, nicely done. There is some parental sacrifice for show. And let's see, Davidson, the RK thing is interesting. Growth rate, yep. Care, yep. Absolutely. Yep, you got it, David. Exactly. So it's basically just two different strategies. And remember, like for life on Earth, there's all kinds of middle ground between R and K. R and K selected are just two of the kind of big main categories, and it's something that determines kind of actually you can put a lot of different traits into these things like lifespan, things like age at first reproduction, things like number of offspring, all of that can get related. Yeah, I agree. Infected styles, Chris. I totally agree. So many different adaptations. So yeah, velvet spider mothers really go all in, and it at a certain point, if for your species, um, there aren't as many opportunities maybe for mating, or for whatever reason creating the eggs is really requires a lot of energy, then maybe it does make sense to just have a single group of offspring and then die afterward. Like that winds up working. Thousands is yes, where thousands is actually an understatement. Amazingly, yeah. So that's another cool one. Meanwhile, uh, this is kind of like RMK. This totally throws a wrench in what we typically think of. Insects in general, just absolutely just seem like put them into the R selected pile. Like throw them all in there. Those are like classic R selected. But I came across something really interesting that the tsetse fly in Africa, so TSE, it's pronounced a couple different ways depending on where you live. Those flies, this is wild. Looks like they only have a single larva at a time. And so I want to send you guys at a time. Send you guys something on this. Yeah, like they don't lay eggs. They produce a larva. Granted, they can do it like every 10 days, but and these are the life cycle. So what I'm reading you from right now is from the WHO. The reason why the World Health Organization is related to tsetse flies is because they are a vector for sleeping sickness, which is a disease that humans can get. So there's a lot about this species through World Health Organization. But I'll send you guys this PDF, and it's just about this vector and about their life cycle. But it's just totally amazing. Like, I mean, like in here, the life cycle. The female tsetse fly does not lay eggs, but produces larvae one at a time. The larva develops in the uterus over a period of 10 days and is then deposited fully grown on moist soil or sand in shaded places. Females mate only once in their life, and with optimum availability for food and breeding habitats, can produce a larva every 10 days. So they mate only once. So I wonder if they mate once and then they fertilize a bunch of eggs, but then they lay them out. Oh, this is wild. This is a fun little information trap here. Yeah, so it's under water sanitation and resources and vector, but what this is just a PDF about tsetse flies. But like that's so different than anything we think of when we think of flies as parents, right? I don't know, I typically am like, oh, those are R selected, they don't live that long, they like reproduce maybe all the time, or like do that once in just a huge amount. Yeah, Zachary, I don't know. That's something that I'd have to pause and look up, and I'm totally going to later on. Yeah, I'm curious about that fertilization and where that's stored and how that works. But even just imagining a fly's uterus is mind blowing, like that's just kind of amazing. Yeah. Chris is mentioning, yeah, if you laid eggs over a period of time, there'd be more opportunities for survival. Sure. And again, it's the environment that winds up kind of creating that pressure to then see the ways that species react to that. Yeah, it's just like totally amazing. So there's another cool mother example, and the last neat one I have for you, which I found, which is so cool. And again, I'm trying to give you examples that are invertebrates, because invertebrates are the majority of life on Earth. And by majority, I mean like 95% majority. And so I think it's worth checking in on mothers and motherhood in these species, however we like to define that. And so I found a really cool bit about crabs, a specific crab, the Jamaican bromeliad crab. The bromeliad is talking about these tropical plants. And so they live within these tropical plants that kind of overlap in and within water, and it kind of creates this nice little cup for these crabs to lay eggs and have their young. But what's really cool is that the mother crabs will actually kind of like environmentally engineer these little cups of water where the offspring are. They'll go in and adjust things like the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and the pH by doing things like removing leaves that are rotting and are contributing to acidity. By bringing in certain shells that will then dissolve and have calcium in them. So they're like making these like perfect little micro habitats that are just perfectly suited, even down to the pH level for their offspring to then have a good start and a good chance at doing life. And those little baby crabs, they need that calcium to undergo the molt and move into that next life phase. So by the mom bringing them in, bringing in these like I guess they're snail shells that'll dissolve, that allows them to have that calcium to go into that next phase. It's just so cool, so cool. Yeah, chemist crab, right? I like that's just so neat. So neat. And and there's so many species obviously that are within the ocean and are subject to so many different environmental factors like oxygen concentration within the water and pH, thinking about acidity. And it's hard to make like a micro habitat. But when you have these tropical plants that kind of overlap and form this, it's not totally isolated, right? But it's like more isolated than most things in most places. And so they can kind of then go in and engineer it, which is just so awesome. Really cool. So yeah, chemist crabs, there you go. Jamaican bromeliad crabs. So awesome. So yeah, that was just a little bit of some Mother's Day fun for us, thinking about parenthood and motherhood, and also just keeping in mind, getting out of our human perspective, that the reason mothers, fathers, parents, right, adults that have juveniles, the reason why they do what they do is for survival and ultimately, species level and population level survival. So these adaptations we have are totally driven by the environment and by the availability of something like food and resources and things like that. And, it takes a lot of resources to, make new life and to keep that life safe while it grows and develops. So I guess I want you all to know that there are many different versions of what it means to be a mother, what it means to take care of something for all these different species of life on Earth. So it's very cool. Very cool. Yes, indeed. So any thoughts in the chat or any interesting examples you guys can think of? We're trying to stay away from mammalian just for right now. Try to think about the invertebrates, the larger chunk of biodiversity life on Earth. Anything about parental care that you think is interesting? Maybe if you keep or care for an invertebrate and you know something about them. Let's see it in the chat. Let's see your Mother's Day tidbits. Tree parenthood. Well, again, right? How we define mother or father or parent, obviously we have our human lens on it, but I think we can totally consider like, maybe with a tree, we don't have to necessarily split it up. It's parenthood, but tree parenthood, the way that trees and gosh, plants, what a whole different world, right? When it comes to parenthood, the way that they're spreading their genetic material, but also ensuring that those individuals do okay, right? Yeah, Zachary, I agree. Totally cool. And in terms of considering them mothers, I don't know. Mother's kind of a holdover from our species and species that have, they call them diploid, like diploid species that have, two parents that are both contributing. But hey, if you're a parent, like a plant that clones itself, you're still a parent. Probably who cares about the word mother at that point, but yeah, totally cool. Um, and let's see. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, the toads in the back is like that's like the Life on Earth version of Dr. Pimple Popper, like right there. Except don't pop them because they're baby toads. That is like just the wildest thing. Yeah. So I mean, it's so interesting. Like there are so many versions of, hey, I want this to be safe, so I'm gonna keep it near me. I mean, that's classic. Like developing in the back, developing in the uterus, developing within a pouch for marsupials. Like keeping things close is, very, very classic, right? Yeah, anglerfish. I mean, the father is a sperm delivery mechanism or like a DNA delivery mechanism. Yeah, anglerfish are totally fascinating. Anglerfish are a great example of a probably, yeah, mothers doing the hard work. By that I mean just the biological females with that species, because yeah, dad just kind of latches on, parasites it up, and yeah, I guess they all just get fed and then dies. So no, there you go. Yeah, because mammals. Yeah, I know, because mammals. Yeah, but marsupials, I was just giving like general examples of it. Doesn't matter like mammal to amphibian. It's just so cool that you see um, the strategy of keep them close is so classic, right? Because it works. Works really well. Yep, seahorses, totally cool example of differences in parenthood and different strategies. And again, these things have to do with, where we draw the line for like biological sex and chromosomes. But like generally, behavior is just really fascinating. It's just very cool. It's very cool. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And of course, sharks, which are just awesome. Sharks have so many strategies, like of motherhood, as far as like live birth versus eggs. They have so many different strategies for reproduction, which is really cool as well. Um, Octopuses are interesting. Period. Like they're just the coolest. Some octopuses, their eggs take like, I think it's not even months; it's like years before they are developed, and so they'll have to protect them for like a really long time and hang close. Um, yeah, I mean, yes, some octopuses can have those like huge farms of eggs, and that's pretty typical for some marine environments for sure. Yep. Um, Tamar, I don't know necessarily, and again, it depends if we're talking about giving birth. So like producing egg or fertilized egg, it's typically yes, yes. I was about to say, Laura, go on about that. She's talking about a family of small fish and a specific type of reproductive strategy. Laura, I'll let you go on and mention a tiny bit more about what you've put here. Also, it's just a great family name. Yep, corals also absolutely. Just giving Laura a moment to type and share what she has for that. Yes, yes, look at that. We are using etymology. Tropho. Yes. I love how my mom has joined the live stream. She missed the part where I was telling her how much I love her, and she comes in to ask about which ones eat their young. Um, Thanks, Mom. Thanks a lot. Maybe you missed the one where I was saying that velvet spiders, the young, eat the mother as their first meal. So how about that? Take that, Mom. Yes. Mom, I love you so much. Thanks for joining. We're talking about all the different versions of what parenthood means and how environment determines so much of that that behavior, etc. Um, and yes, indeed, happy Mother's Day to all our wonderful mothers. Um, so, yep, as we're catching up and as Laura's typing more about that family of fish, I will answer some questions about that you guys have left leading up to live stream. So Eric Revold has asked about, are there any cryptids you think could actually exist, and how could it exist? So cryptid, think like cryptic. This means something that is hidden or mysterious. So cryptids are kind of referring to like the species of lore. So the Bigfoot, the Yeti, the I was going to say abominable snowman, but that is so not correct. Oh God, is it Christmas yet? Great, claymation, let's roll. The like Loch Ness monster, these kind of things. Oh, thank you, David. Thank you. Um, I think there are cryptids that could actually exist, but I think that the most likely place is something in water. The fact that we've recently, on the last I don't know, even in like the last year, found different kind of subspecies of like killer whales. I mean, killer whales are so large, and yet we have just found some in a place in the oceans that we like never knew they were before. And those are like massive things. So I think that there are likely, think about something like the giant squid. Well, we now know like there are massive, massive cephalopods. So the things that are within like that squid family, these exist. These aren't myth. There could be exaggeration of certain features or certain specs, but I mean these exist. Something like a Loch Ness monster. We also have to think about nutrients. So within a lake, it is hard to get that big in a lake. It's totally possible. But also, how do you have like a single individual? It would probably have to spawn and have to reproduce in order to then be known for generations. So then that means there needs to be resources for like two Nessies and like maybe three if it's diploid, if it has two parents contributing. And hey, maybe they wind up eating the mom Nessie after birth. Maybe it's one of those. Colossal even. Thank you, Zachary. Zachary's making a lovely squid joke here. I love it. Yeah, so my answer is yes, there totally could be. And if there were, I think the ocean. I think water is where something like that is. And it really just has to do with our own ignorance of the whole picture, because we only know so much about the ocean and even about stuff on land, terrestrial species too. You know. Yes. So David, triploid or even quadruploid plants are the place you're going to want to look for really interesting. We call it ploidy. And that all has to do with the way that chromosomes and how many copies of chromosomes happen. And actually, I want to say, we're going to check. I want to say that seedless watermelon and like seedless plants that humans have artificially selected for, I want to say that they're triploid, because think about when a fruit is seedless, like, oh, seedless watermelon, that's cool. Well, what you're really saying is that this is an infertile or like an unviable offspring. Let me check this though. Triploid seedless. Whoa, triploid seedless watermelon was the first thing that came up. Yes. Oh, she's got it still. Yeah. So the fact that seedless watermelon are triploid is the reason why they're sterile and don't have seeds. Well, pretty wild, right? Pretty wild. Good stuff. Bill set up. Oh, cool. Laura's mentioning more about that placenta within that family of fish. Yeah. Yeah. So So there you go, David. Yes, they're absolutely triploid, and it's not necessarily that the parent is triploid, because usually organisms, or sorry, like individuals that are triploid are typically sterile, so they won't then be parents, but they were selected for, or like in the case of fruits and things that we make, they are purposefully chosen to be sterile, therefore allowing us to bite into the watermelon and not spit out seeds because it's sterile, because it's triploid. Whoa, all goes together. It's wild. Um, so that was following up a little bit on Eric Lervold's question, and then David, who's with us here, asked about upsides. The upsides of COVID-19, and the idea of those, lasting past us getting a vaccine. So basically, vaccine happens. If this winds up being something in the past for the species, what are those upsides? And I know there's a lot of different, possibilities here, but I will offer one. I think that behaviorally and socially, I think there are a lot of younger students right now. I'm thinking about my wonderful friend who's a fourth grade teacher, and I'm thinking about her, 9, 10-year-olds that are in her class that are getting to see an adult, a teacher in their life, be more human than ever before. I think when we're little, teachers are, in our heads, they like live at the school. Like, oh yeah, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, they're the person that lives at school and I go see them every day. We don't think about them as humans who have lives and who have families and who might have cats and dogs, or might run marathons or perform in musical theater, all these like things about them, and their home life. And that's because, teachers keep those things private, to the extent that they would like, as a matter of appropriateness. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that there's something happening with now these students on Zoom, seeing their teachers as very real people who have maybe their toddlers run and interrupt, or their cat jump on the laptop, or they're in their home, or, like me right now, you're seeing like piece of my home. I'm not in the studio, I don't have the green screen. I think there is a breaking of the fourth wall. That's a theater term for just kind of talking about shattering that illusion between, something being performed and something being real. I think that is an upside that will last past this, because there are these 9, 10-year-olds, even 6, 7-year-olds that are understanding that the adults in their lives are people, and they aren't these like magic figures, but that they're people that have their own lives and their own hardships and their own, personalities and families. They're learning that much earlier than maybe they would later on. And I think that generationally, that's got to do something. And I think that it is going to do something that is kind and caring and empathetic. Because I think that especially with adolescence, the idea of finding out like, wait, my parents can make mistakes. Like my parent can like be in a bad mood and just be an ass, or like my parent can have a really bad day and be struggling with their own thing. We need to apply that to our teachers and these other wonderful adults in our lives too. And to have that earlier on, I think could be really cool. Yeah, exactly. So exactly, Chris. Like when yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. When you see your teacher accidentally like at the grocery store and your mind is blown because in your head they live at the school. Like that's who they are. Exactly. Yeah. Totally. Oh, Laura, that's awesome. Nice. So yeah, that's one of those upsides that I think will last. So while we're now gathered in here together, like I said at the top of the live stream, a nature league, like lowercase n, lowercase l, in my head was just an idea of a gathering of people within a singular concern, of the idea of life on Earth and the places where life on Earth lives. And a nature league, like any league, think about any group of superheroes, have different powers and have different ways that they contribute. And I think that as we move forward, finishing out 2020 and beyond, when we start kind of refocusing and looking more at non-COVID related things like climate change, like loss of biodiversity, we're going to start that having that feeling again of kind of what can I do, or who am I in this larger journey, this larger picture. And so since there's so many of you that I see your names and your handles all the time, and I love having your interactions, I think it'd be great for maybe us to know each other a tiny bit more in terms of who we are and what we contribute to something like a league, right? And so I'll try to moderate it within the chat. And you don't have to say anything personal about yourself if you don't want to, but I would love, you know, those of you who are comfortable with that, to just kind of share, like, what do you do? You know, what is your like, why are you interested in life on Earth as a topic? And maybe mention like some of your favorite species, or some of the species you really enjoy sharing habitat with where you live. So Tamar, I'm totally gonna call you out because you're wonderful. So Tamar Ziri is here, and she and I live very far apart, and we've never met, but I consider her absolutely a friend, even though it's through the internet. So Tamar, share what you do. What is the thing that you do in terms of you know, work or kind of career? I love you too. So Tamar does, I already know the answer. She works within